China's new space station. With a lot of news around companies like SpaceX, Blue Origins, NASA, etc., making advances in the space race,
In 1996, China were launching their largest rocket ever built, the Long March 3B.
China has stepped back into it. You're on Tech This, and in today's video, we'll talk about China building its new space station. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Let's begin. Recently, China's space program took a massive step forward with its first module of their forthcoming modular space station. The launch took off from the Wenchang spacecraft launch facility. It lifted off on a Long March 5 rocket, the largest rocket that China has right now. Standing at roughly 53 meters tall, the rocket is crucial to China's space program as it was designed specifically to haul the many components of its space station. So to launch these massive payloads, the rocket is cryogenically fueled with 4 boosters around the outside, producing roughly 10,600 kilonewtons of thrust. The Long March 5 burns RP-1 and liquid oxygen to get to the sky. The core of the rocket is liquid hydrogen and oxygen, and this was able to carry the 20-ton module all the way into orbit without any further staging. So the core stage, where the engines were lit on the ground, made all the way to orbit, which is a rare sight. The last spacecraft that really did that was the space shuttle back in the 60s.
China realized it needed to create its own space program in order to keep up.
This core is going to be part of a multi-module space station. It's working on a tight deadline because once in orbit, the countdown begins. That's because the space agency hopes to finish the station by 2022, marking an ambitious plan to push the boundaries of the country's human spaceflight program. There are at least 2 other modules that will be coming in the future. But before those arrive, we're going to get cargo and crew delivered. Right now, the module was put into orbit. It's currently raising its trajectory into a circularized orbit. In the coming weeks, the booster will decay, and we're going to see it send up a cargo spacecraft. The cargo spacecraft is called the Tiangong. That launch is also from Wenchang and is based on their smaller space stations. China has previously flown 2 space stations called the Tiangong 1 and the Tiangong 2. These were small space stations, and their launch mass was around 10 tons, which is comparable to that of a Dragon or a Starliner. These stations are optimized to provide space for the crew to do their science experiments and experience space.
China is finally doing something to break away from their rocket-dropping habit. A new launch site has been built on the island of Hainan.
So, the first module of this new space station, which may be called Tiangong when it's wholly assembled, the module itself is called Tianyi-1, translating to joining of the heavens. The core module is a derivative of the Russian-Soviet DOS design, which is what Salyut-1 and onwards were based on. These modules, which have a very similar design, were used in many of the Russian stations. It was the core module of the Mir space station and the Zvezda service module on the International Space Station. To complete the station, an additional 11 flights are planned, all throughout 2022. And well, that's already much less than more than 30 missions it took to build the ISS over the span of a decade. Tianyi is going to include 5 docking ports. It provides power and propulsion so it can maintain orbit.
It makes no secret about its space ambitions. Over the next 18 months, at least 10 more launches are planned.
Moreover, it has all the avionics and sensors it needs to fly, and it has room for some equipment racks. It also has life support, so it will be able to support the crew. Until the other modules arrive, we're going to see a Tianjin dock with it, and then in June, we're going to see a launch from Zhakuan, which will have a crew of 3 on a Shenzhou. That will go to the station and dock to the Nadir port, and then they'll start doing experiments in space.
Either in the core module or in the experimental modules, each rack will be dedicated into a certain area.
The Long March 5 has a broader fairing, so there's a lot of stuff attached to the surface. That makes it bulkier inside the fairing. When the Russian modules went up to the space station, they did have to do many EVAs to attach stuff that couldn't fit because it had to work inside the fairings. In contrast, there's many things here that's already deployed, which will simplify some of their operations. It includes a robotic manipulator arm that will be essential when the modules come later on. The core module is about 20 tons. Next year, there are 2 science modules called Wangqian and Mengqian. This will complete the 5 docking ports. The crew will use the robotic arm to undock them and shift them around to the port. When all 3 modules are together in space, the space station will have a mass of about 60 tons, making it the 4th largest space station ever built after Mir and the International Space Station.
China has never been allowed to participate in the International Space Station, even though China would bring a large amount of money to the table.
Also, it's going to be 6 times larger than what China has previously built, and it is open to international partners. It's also worth mentioning that the Chinese station is being built using docking adapters derived from the International Docking System standard. It is largely compatible with the Androgynous Peripheral Attachment System, APAS. This means that mechanically the docking systems on Dragon and Starliner are broadly similar and possibly compatible with those on the Chinese station. However, we might see that happening due to political reasons, but you never know in the future.
4月29日，长征5号 B-12运载火箭成功将空间站。
Maybe there's some way to bring China's work into the international community in a way that the US is happy, and we get this glorious future of humanity working in space together. Moving on, China already announced experiments that are going to fly from many European nations. Only the US has this political hurdle that stops the US from working with any Chinese space program, whereas other countries are already coming up with plans. In the last few weeks, Russia claimed to abandon the International Space Station and perhaps work with the Chinese. We're not sure how that works out, but going to be interesting to watch.
Just lift off a few minutes ago and successfully sending the core module of China's space station into orbit.
The launch of the Chinese space station now means that we'll be seeing the return of Chinese astronauts, or taikonauts, to orbit. At the time being, we have 11 people on the International Space Station, which is high for a very long time. But the record of people simultaneously in space is 13 back in 2009. So it's possible later this year that we will see more people in space than we've ever seen before. This will lead to more experiments in space and hence understanding the cosmos better than we ever did. While the launch dates of other modules are still unknown, it's better to be ready than never. Do you think that China would be able to complete its space station by the end of 2022? What prospects would the new space station have? Let us know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out our video on the International Space Station. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Tech This.